So Paul, Genevieve, earlier on was talking about capacity building and, the tremendous gap, in terms of knowledge. There is disparity between, what a certificate shows and what the actual practical, experience or requirements are, which is even the micro entrepreneurs or small and medium-sized enterprises are even struggling with in terms of coming to terms with the financial on the financial literacy side. So Paul, I'd like to hand over the whole panel to you now, and if you could just carry on the conversation on this particular topic. We have Raphaël, who has just gone backstage because of issues with his microphones, but he'll join us back in a while. Oh, I think he's back on already. All right, you have a full panel now, Paul. Over to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Maggie. So, welcome everyone, and thank you, Maggie. Sorry again for the technical difficulty. Jump right into some of the issues that are going up, and maybe Svetlana, maybe we can start with you. There's just a lot going on in terms of data privacy and a lot of the things that you've been working with. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges as digital takes off for client protection?
Before replying your question, I would like to do a short introduction because people probably, not everyone knows about MCRB. Since I was kicked out technically from the panel, unfortunately, the dark side of technology is doing that with us now. So once again, my name is Svetlana. I'm representing Myanmar Center for Responsible Business here in Yangon. Center does a lot of things in conducting human rights compliance with business, civil society, activists, international organizations, and so. But for my program, which is focusing on digital rights itself, I'm working on various directions in terms of providing recommendations on cyber policy, e-commerce, data protection and privacy to the interested stakeholders, including the government. Also, we provide a lot of recommendations in the frame of Myanmar Digital Rights Forum, which I invite you to visit when we will announce about that, probably next year, where we also tackle various topics on digital rights. It's including access, it's including freedom of expression, privacy and data protection, some technological issues, and more. Yes, and currently, since we are on the edge of new legislation, hopefully next year, but the drafting process started several years ago on cyber law, and hopefully there will be more steps towards e-commerce law and data protection law. We conducting a lot of discussions and also providing sort of recommendations on what to do next. And thank you, Paul, for a question. As for the challenges in Myanmar, it's, as you mentioned also, it's hard to understand where to start with, actually, because Myanmar is very several layers, let's say, and a complex of challenges which we have to deal with. But of course, we're taking it step by step. For instance, the privacy and data protection right now, the biggest issue is that there's no law. Unfortunately, there's no law, and we don't really know when it's going to be and what is the direction the lower, let's say, producing institutions are taking now. For instance, the drafted law, the cyber law, which was like drafted in 2018, was still like provisions on privacy and data protection are not clear there, and we hope that it's not going to be within the cyber law. It should be as a separate law, for example, like it has in Singapore or in Thailand, or even Like if we take the United States, they also have a separate Privacy Act protecting privacy. And the challenge, apart of the legislation side, is also the, let's say, the human side of it. People know how to use Facebook. Most of Myanmar people think that Facebook is the internet itself. So like everything what happens in Facebook is the internet. But however, the understanding of privacy and data protection is very challenging here, unfortunately. We have cases when people just buy a phone already with installed Facebook application there, and they don't even know how to open their account on Facebook. So, and the shop seller or the one who is uploading units for the cell number are opening this profile for them in Facebook and has all the passwords and all the logins with it. So we're talking here that the security of your privacy is very, very fragile here. And when we come to the financial sector and we come to the financial data, which is actually subcategory of private data, it's like more sensitive, then a lot of people can be in a very dangerous situation, not mentioning the cybersecurity side. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Svetlana. Very interesting. I mean, it's a very hot topic, I think, with everything that's going on. In the interest of time, maybe we'll move to Raphaël.
Yeah.
You could briefly introduce yourself. Looking at financial literacy and our work with the MAP diagnostic and looking at the whole country and our webinars. I mean, financial literacy and digital literacy comes up as a huge area of need. And keep hearing it from the government and the private sector. You could talk about what you're doing and also what are some of the issues in terms of the financial.
Okay, I think I will illustrate with the story of the Money King company. Basically, I created in 2018. We started basically really to bring this to put Money King in business in 2019. I've been working with Myanmar, just a short introduction of myself, since 2012. Being there at the time, you had no internet, no literacy at all. I was basically sending a proposal to one of my clients in 2011 when I came on, first time on holiday, a 50 kilobyte document took me basically 30 minutes to be able to send it just on Yahoo in the lobby of the Kandoji Palace at this time, and struggling wishing not to have any answer because it was basically a 1 hour, 1.5 hour process just to send this 3-4 pages document at that time. So Myanmar is coming from there, and I've been doing financial advisory and consulting in Asia, and seeing that there was a fantastic possibility in Myanmar basically at this time. I saw basically a fantastic opportunity with the digitalization of the country, where it was only 2% mobile penetration, now 126. But when I was there in 2015, I was thinking that Myanmar will go quickly to digitalization, and that the impression I had in 2018, when after advising basically one of the leading European financial service broker to enter in Asia, meeting all the key guys, basically Compare Asia, Goué, C88, and the other ones basically in the ASEAN. I said, okay, this is something we need to do in Myanmar. And 2018 was the time Uber started its activity in Myanmar, when you started basically to order food, basically Food Panda, maybe 2017. So we said, okay, the people are digital literate. And when we started our site as Money King Myanmar, which is basically financial and insurance let's say under bracket broker. We try to facilitate the non-bank, the people that are unbanked or underbanked to get access to financial solution in the model of Bank Bazaar in India. We believe that people could, as they were already apparently digital literate, with everyone having the Facebook in hand and the instant message, either Messenger or Viber in hand, we say, okay, that will be something that will work. And we set a pilot platform to say, okay, just to learn about Myanmar and the specificities. And the first specificities compared to Southeast Asia was the usage of Facebook. So a Burmese is not getting to make a search on Google, but they go to Facebook and they try to find something there because they haven't been digital literate as we are. The second thing that struck me is they don't know to handle themselves and to find financial product by themselves. And this was my main discovery. And when we contacted our customers or visitors and tried to check with them what was the main issue, there was just something they were not kind of a misunderstanding on the value proposition and what works in Indonesia, which has been where the country has been, where the people have been used to work with financial institutions for years. In Thailand, the same is not working, the same clues are not working in Myanmar. And we said, okay, the first, and when we were advising basically a lot of microfinance companies in this country, we saw, I learned from there that one of the key drivers of a microfinance company is education. Education. And basically, I've been working in this consumer finance company business for over 20 years. And I saw that in Myanmar, this is the specificity, education, because the people, they just simply don't know. And they just don't know what's a loan. They just don't know the risk they take if they don't repay. So you need to go from the root. And the pure online is currently not the best business model. This is my learning experience. So this is where we took this 1 year when we launched our business to learn. And that was the main key. They say, okay, we may feel that Myanmar should be so different to Thailand and Indonesia that it's better we get the small scale pilot, we see, and then after that we will learn. And what we learn is we need to educate the people, and financial literacy is the key point. And education is not only online. This is where the new release of our platform that we will launch in December will be trying to educate the people online, but also offline. And the key things is you cannot be only a comparator in this country. You need to have this on this offline and the contact with the people, talk to them, and in order to drive them and help them basically to structure their information, because this is something they cannot do by themselves. And that my main lesson I would that is driving the upgrade of our platform is up. We are in an apparent literate country where we think, okay, you have 126% mobile penetration, but you need to educate the people to use the device and to become literate. And as you have some fantastic segment with the young Y generation, the older Z generation, that will be the user of tomorrow, that may be the user of today. And within the next 5 years, everything will be certainly digitalized, but today is still a lot of offline you need to handle in any process in this country. And the same, I started in China in 2006, and it reminded me basically the old-timer when I arrived in China that's insisted on this face-to-face relationship and the home visit the consumer finance had to do in 2006 in China. to understand the client.
Okay. No, thank you, Raphaël. That's really interesting, especially looking at the online, offline, and the needs. I think we often don't think about that. Thank you. Now, passing on to Ahson. Maybe you could share briefly about what are you doing, what is TPS, and what do you see as some of the issues that are dealing with financial literacy and digital inclusive economy with TPS. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And just to start off with the introduction, I represent TPS Worldwide. It's a global provider of digital payment and banking solutions across the globe. It serves a diverse clientele in terms of banks, central banks, payment service operators, and microfinance institutions across Middle East, Africa, South Asia, and some countries in Europe. So we are serving more than 150 institutions directly and indirectly through our partners in all these different territories. We provide payment platforms and digital banking solutions primarily, and then there are certain services around digital transformation in terms of robotic process engineering, process automation, and all of these areas. As TPS, we have been, providing technology solutions to, different mobile money operators, especially in the developing and frontier economies, mainly in Africa and some part of the South Asia as well. We have seen, in different territories, we have observed that financial literacy is extremely important in terms of, it's the key driver of financial inclusion. And I would agree with Raphaël based on his experience that, you have to start off with offline services and then gradually move upstream and start, providing online digital payment mechanisms to the masses. Myanmar is basically a very so the way I look at it is a country which is full of potential when it comes to digitalization overall and when it comes to digital financial services. If you look at the country's overall population stats, it's a wonderful mix of people, average age being 29 years, and which shows that there's a lot of young population which is using internet, which is using digital services for various purposes. But financial literacy overall is a bit low in terms of just 26% people have bank accounts as per the different stats available with regards to Myanmar. Financial instruments, when you talk about credit cards or ATM cards, it's a very, very low percentage, less than 2%. So people's trust on digital financial infrastructure and mainly the banking sector is pretty low, and it has to do with the credit crisis that happened back in 2003, and the way the things have progressed from then. From that point onwards, people have actually a trust deficit in terms of the financial services being offered to them, and the fact that what is going to happen to their money if, let's say, there's a problem with the financial sector in terms of any regulatory intervention or things like that. I would agree with Genevieve when she said that the fact that people do not trust the banks is also to do with the way the processes are structured and the education of the staff that is there serving the customers. Because in terms of any problems, what happens is that if the existing services are not able to meet people's needs when it is when they are in a problem. There are no proper mechanisms of complaint redressals or any dispute resolution in terms of any payment being stuck, be it a cross-border payment or any local payment being made at a merchant in Myanmar. Then obviously it actually discourages the people to participate in and to go for a digital means of making payments. So I think while looking at the overall usage of digital services in Myanmar, I think the next 3 to 4 years are very, very important, and people would definitely start picking up on the digital financial services side, mainly because if you look at the evolution, just a couple of years ago, all these different international payment schemes that are offering financial services to banks and to the people through their digital financial products like payment cards and all these point of sale machines, they were allowed to start accepting these international payment instruments in Myanmar. And if you look at the progression since then, people have started understanding the value proposition of having bank accounts for savings, for to manage their personal finances, to have basic knowledge of the access to their funds through a digital instrument. So and as these factors pick up, and there's improved penetration in terms of acceptance of digital payment instruments across the country, you would start seeing these people who are already using digital services. They are very active on Facebook, they're very active on social media, using internet for various other non-financial purposes, to start having more trust in the electronic payments. And that's a very important factor. Because, for example, if the consumers, as I said, have proper recourse for fraudulent transactions, or have proper complaint redressal mechanism, or if there is any transaction that gets into a dispute, they have a proper refund process enabled by the banks, it will actually add a lot of value to increase the trust on the digital payments. And then reliability of systems and the assurance that digital or electronic methods will work when needed is also very important. So in terms of technology that is actually powering all these digital transactions in the banking sector and in the financial services side, it's very important to have those systems in place which actually are reliable. They are there, available online to serve, to process transactions when it is actually needed. And any downtimes or any service disruptions actually cause people to distrust, and have a negative experience altogether. For instance, if there is an e-commerce transaction that goes, that does not gets completed, and the experience goes bad, so the general behavior is such that people try not to go for it again, and making them actually come back to use digital payment instruments to make a e-commerce transaction, and to have that experience again takes a lot of confidence building after one such bad experience. So all these different factors are very important. And lastly, as I said, as the acceptance mechanisms, payment acceptance mechanisms improve, and there's a critical mass of merchants, be it e-commerce or retail merchants, who start accepting digital payments, it will also add to the overall trust of people to start adopting to digital means of making payments and having and utilizing digital instruments, offered by banks or mobile money services operators in the country. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, thanks so much. And issues of trust and good experience are so important. So thank you for that input. We shift over to Jadul. I do have a old who's with Fern Software. I do have a long time connection with Fern Software. When I was CEO of AMK in Cambodia, we used Fern Software. So what is the role of a core banking system, and how can that enhance financial literacy? Shadol. Oh, okay, you're not there. Okay, let's then move over to Genevieve. If you could say some final, I know you haven't had a chance to speak, but give some final words on some of your experience and some of the things you see, some of the challenges and issues you see in Myanmar.
Thanks, Paul. I think a lot has been said, and I just touch on a few things that the previous speakers have actually mentioned. I mean, Svetlana, sorry if I mispronounce your name.
No problem.
I think a lot of what you said is very true. It resonates with me. And I think, when we're trying to get this whole ecosystem set up, payments, digital transformation, a lot goes towards having that framework set up so that at least people know, okay, there's a law, the government's behind it, they're backing it. I think that gives you an additional level of trust. Otherwise, it's sort of like a peer-to-peer. And you're never really sure whether that peer is someone you trust. So I think having that national ecosystem is a big thing. And I do know that, as you mentioned, there are plans for laws. They're supposedly having an e-commerce law. It will be a big thing going forward. And, Ahson, you mentioned such great things, and a lot of what you said truly resonated with me. For example, when you were talking about trust, it's there. It's just there everywhere. And, people just need to know that if the money is being put in, what's happening to it. This fact that there's so few people that are banked, it's increased, but it's taken a long time because do you trust the bank? If you think the money's in the bank, you have no idea where it's going, nobody puts it. I still remember when I got to Myanmar, and one of the things people would say to me is, well, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money that's being loaned. It's just not reflected in the so-called loans from the bank. It's all peer-to-peer, and they were charging huge percentage of interest. They were getting collateral based on jewelry and land, but the bank was completely out of it. So there's this huge underground banking system, if you think about it. And Raphaël, the point you made, which I thought really resonated with me, is it's not just online, it's a question of online and offline. So we actually funded this company called Showpay. And Showpay's role was to provide a platform that matched SMEs who wanted to sell their invoices to funders, high net worth individuals who wanted to buy it. Again, this was not part of the banking system, but it gave people with money an opportunity to take part in alternative financing. I buy an invoice that's backed by the credit worthiness of a big corporate. And so I figured, okay, you're an SME, maybe I don't trust you because I'm not sure if you can pay me back. But because you're backed and that invoice is paid by a big MNC, well-known, I'm pretty sure they'll pay you. So they took that risk. And from the SMEs, they found that there was another place they could go to because access to finance is also very difficult in Myanmar. But going to Ralph's point is that for these SMEs, if they weren't familiar with these new products, you actually had to go down to the company, explain to them, show them training videos, have someone sitting next to them to explain how does this work. Because it's a new product, they don't understand. But it allows them to then monetize the receivables that they have. Otherwise, a lot of SMEs sit with huge amounts of receivables, and if people don't pay them because they're pushing the payment cycle, they're stuck. So what I see is everything that all of you have said absolutely resonates with me because I can see it happening on the ground. And we can talk about financial literacy and capacity building, but the point of having to train people from the ground up, I totally am with you, Raphaël, on that point. So thanks.
Just to add to what Jean-Louis was sharing in the last point, I fully agree with her that it's a combination of offline and online mechanisms together. But just to give you an example, that in Pakistan, what we did was that we basically enabled a service for e-commerce payments which was not basically a pure online payment acceptance, and rather also not 100% offline payment mode. So what we were doing was that, we introduced a payment instrument or a payment method which allowed consumers to go on an e-commerce marketplace, get their order, and at the time of making a payment, they were being issued a digital voucher, which basically allowed them to make a payment, go to any agent, any mobile money agent around their area in their neighborhood, and just make a payment in cash by just getting that voucher redeemed at the merchant. So, I mean, this is halfway there to educate that person and just to get him to that kind of an experience where he would certainly, it will add more trust for that bottom of the pyramid user or consumer to participate in the digital payment ecosystem, and then gradually, get to that level of experience where he would be having more trust to have a completely digital payment mode enabled for himself for online purchases, for digital purchases, and going into a prepay method, which basically makes you pay ahead of time, and you get the inventory or whatever you have ordered, after the fact. So this is something that basically is just an example, but there are so many other areas where you can actually combine both offline and online mechanisms to come up with a service which actually gradually increases the confidence of people in the financial services.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like also, a bit another example, like one of their very important thing, which always goes together with inclusion and all ICT sector together, like the tool which provides access to this, like internet, for example. Like, I mean, if people are restricted from the access to internet, what is happening right now in some of the Rakhine and Chin townships in Myanmar, then people simply don't have the access to experience those new technology things, like those applications, not mentioning the education, how to use that. And another thing which kinds of makes a restricted access was the SIM card registration in the time of pandemic, when people simply cannot go out and register their cards in time. Like all these things all together are really making the huge obstacle, not only to experiencing this, it's also kind of diminishing the level of trust to the digital platforms as well. Because, like, okay, it's like one day I have access, second day my SIM card is canceled, or I cannot register, so then I better go back to cash. And then we lose a significant percentage of people involving into digitalization, especially in the financial sector.
Yeah, yeah. But I would like to add one thing, basically, that we see, with the digitalization is moving with the pandemic situation, and that is one of the things we saw observe in terms of traffic visits and basically awareness, interest from parties basically to work with us. People are looking for more digitalization. And what is happening in China is not new. I remember a discussion I had so that was one of my forecasts and something I communicate in a meeting I had in 2016 with the CEO of Carrefour China. Reminded one thing, there was two big shifts in China for digitalization of payment. Number one came the SRAS in 2003, and he said basically before SRAS it was 95% cash. That was the 95% cash that the before COVID situation in Myanmar. And he said in 2003 after cash it went down to 50%, and the people started to take plastic card. Then came the second driver that moved down China to 5% cash was the WeChat and financial. And this is where I see Myanmar in the future. Today, basically with the COVID-19, you have basically a shift in terms of usage. So people start to say, okay, where they have access to internet through their phone, they try to say how I can move to usage of Facebook to do something where it can help my life. So typically the phone is starting to become something that helps the life, and this is where I see a move. But they are still not ready to move to the 5% cash, I should say. So there is still, basically, we don't trust totally. So we need to have, that will come basically in the next 5 years. The time to have the young people who are addicted, to the time we have more women using Facebook as well, because a lot of those purchasing decision comes from women. Then we will be most successful. So we have 5 years to go to digitalization.
So Raphaël, you go with vendors, huh?
Yeah. So thank you so much to the panel. I mean, this is super interesting panel. Unfortunately, we need to end it. So thank you so much, Genevieve, Svetlana, Ahson, and Raphaël, for such engaging and interesting that you brought up. And on that note, thank you so much.